Hello, good evening, welcome once again. My name is Luke Davis from Agape Media, and tonight we're going to do something very beautiful. We are still proceeding with our Photoshop classes. That's our raster graphics design. Yesterday we were talking about layer separation and how best we can, play around with the layers, remove some layers, delete some layers, like so and so on and so forth. But tonight I just want us to go ahead and still proceed with the layer issues. So tonight I'm going to use this photo for our first part of the training, and what I want us to learn is the different effects that we can apply to the different layers. So first of all, what you need to do is to separate the layers. So I think the first effect that we can do from here is how to create a blurry background, okay, without affecting the foreground. The foreground is the object. That's now the photo of this person. This is me when I was at campus 2019 or 2018 there. So we are going to separate the two layers. The object, we're calling it the upper layer, then the background, that's the lower layer. So we're going to separate these two layers using the means that we learned yesterday, using the quick selection tool. So I'll just go ahead and click the quick selection tool, then you click on plus, then I'm seeing the radius. I think it's okay with me. Then I just go ahead and click around where I want to select. Okay, since I also want where this gentleman is seated to be part of the object, I'm also going to select it just like that. Okay, all right. For the purpose of precision, you may have to zoom it a little bit. After zooming, you're able to see, like, at this particular point I don't want it to be selected, so I can go to minus and deselect it. Alright, yeah, this angle only. Okay, I know this class is a little bit boring because sometimes you have to sit and watch what I'm doing, and yet you may not be able to follow me at the same pace. So just hang in there, but you can always follow later. So this is what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do a little bit of precision. I want to deselect the parts where I don't want it to be part of the foreground. So okay, let's just stop there. Okay, then here I can also, sorry, that's too much. So I can go ahead and do that. Okay, so you can always play around with the radius of your brush, the selection brush. You can go ahead and reduce or increase. There are moments when you may have to just drag it like the way I'm doing, because there you're sure of the surface you're selecting. If it's the object you're selecting, if it's uniform, you just go ahead and drag. Photoshop will be able to recognize it, so you can just do this to be more accurate. Yeah, accuracy is what will make you more outstanding as an editor than other people, because if you don't zoom, you will not be able to see these parts very well, so you may have to zoom. So let it be part of you. Remember, we said the shortcut for zooming is Ctrl plus. So if you're an editor and you don't have a mouse, seriously, if you're using a laptop, then you have issues. So make sure you have a mouse and you have your keyboard. I always prefer this external keyboard. It's very good because there are moments when you have to apply the shortcuts. Now there you don't have to waste time, but if you don't have, then definitely you'll face hardships. So I'm just going to assume that this is fair for me. I don't want to waste a lot of time since you guys are following. So let me just have that one. Okay, so this is what we have. Okay, so okay, the eye rather has been left out. Should cut from somewhere here. Yeah, now the beards. Okay, now some of us with beards editing such photos, it's not easy. People with beards, hair, like ladies. Yeah, as an editor, you have to be very careful because you may end up cutting off some hair and leaving it as part of the background, and yet it's not the background, is the person. So anyway, this is it, members. We are repeating what we did yesterday first. So that's the first thing we are doing right now. So if we are done with repeating what we had yesterday, then we can proceed and do something else new. So I think we are done. And remember, we said you just go straight away to refine edge. Now there's something I forgot to say yesterday. After now, some people, instead of selecting the object, they select the background. So assuming you have selected the background and you want to change the selection, you just go to select, then you go to inverse. Now after clicking inverse, you realize the object is not selected, it's the background which is selected. So if you press delete or using the control aware tool, it will delete the background. Sorry, let me cancel that process because it's not what we're interested in right now. But that is it. So let me select the object back by going to that. Now let's repeat what we did yesterday. We went to refine edge. We're trying to separate the two layers, and we add our brush tool. Okay, we select the radius and adjust the radius to some amount like that one. Once you're done with that, you can just zoom onto it and start brushing at points where it has you want to have it brushed. It's you should focus on points where it's having hair. That is it. For example, beards, and for ladies, the hair. So that the hair can be selected. So we said when you press H, you'll be able to access the hand tool. Now you can see the eyebrows have been removed, so you can still go back to the brush tool here and brush on the eyebrows so that it can come back, because we want it to appear. So if it's not appearing, we can press the minus brush so that we remove from inside here. We don't want it. Yes. Okay, this is what we have. All right. We can reduce on the size of the brush. I think the size is too much, the radius rather. It's too much, so I'm going to just go ahead and do that so that the eyebrows can come a little bit. Okay. Now this is without the smart radius. That's what we have. Then with the smart radius, this is what we have. So that's basically what we are having here. So I think we can for the purpose of time, let me just go ahead and brush this. Okay, let me go ahead and brush this. Okay. All right. The hair, just brush the hair. Okay. Then go back to the hand tool, then brush tool like that. Just play around with it. Please don't brush the hair, brush the edge of the hair, because when you brush the hair, now this is what happens. So you may have to go and remove it by using that tool. Okay, the minus tool. It allows you to remove any unwanted selection you made. So that is it. Okay, let me remove this because this is also an irregularity. So we are saying you brush the edge of the hair. You brush the edge of the hair, like at this point, because you want the hair which was not selected to appear, but the ones which is already appearing you don't want to remove, like the way we are removing it at this point. So once you're done, we said you select the contaminate colors, then you go ahead and click OK. So you will see that the background has been removed. Now this background is not removed, is not eliminated. Okay, it's just been hidden from this icon. So the visibility has been hidden. All right, sorry about that. So the visibility has been hidden. Once we select that, we're able to see the background once again. So now this is what we learned yesterday. Now today I want us to go ahead and learn how to manipulate this. Now we have two different layers, the foreground and the background. So actually let's label this one as foreground. So once we double click inside it, we'll be able to rename. So we have our foreground, then we have the background. Just a moment. All right, so now that we're having the foreground and the background, all we have to do is to separate, is to manipulate one of the two. It's a choice that we shall have to make, either to manipulate the foreground or to manipulate the background. So in today's class, I want us to focus on manipulating the background. Then we shall come to foreground, maybe in our next class. So now here we go to the background. Remember, when you click up here, you have selected the foreground, the background. We can go ahead and hide the foreground by clicking this. So the foreground has been hidden. Now we are dealing with the background. What you're seeing is only the background. Now, since we said the first effect we're going to apply is to apply the blurry effect, since we're applying the blurry effect on the background, we make sure it's the background which is selected. Now you go ahead and select this body, because this body is supposed to be part of the foreground. Let us remove this body from the background. I repeat, here we have removed the background and we have only the object. So why don't we also go ahead and we remove the object in the foreground, so that in the background layer we have only the background, nothing else. So how do we do that? This is how we do that. We go to the third tool, which is what we call the lasso tool. Okay, make sure it's the lasso tool. The other tools which are under it, but make sure it's the lasso tool which is selected. So using the lasso tool, select the main object. You don't need to be very precise, just select around like that. I mean, you click on Alt, then you draw around, draw around. Okay, just do that. All right, now that's what we have done. We have selected around the object, the main object in the foreground. We don't have to be very uniform like the way we did in the first instance. So after selecting like that, we go to edit. I repeat, we go to edit and go to fill. Then make sure here inside here you have content aware selected. Then mode is normal. Then opacity, make sure the opacity is 100%. After that, go ahead and click OK. So this Photoshop will be able to fill what you've selected using the background, using the content in the background, what you call content aware tool. So it may take some time, depending on how big the object is, the object in the foreground is. It may take some time to process or to fill it, but it should fill completely, should remove it completely, and that's it. Not so hard to do. So let's just give it some time as we feel that. Now, don't forget that we are still manipulating the background. Whatever effect we're applying here does not affect the foreground. It is strictly limited to the background. As you can see from here, it is the background layer which is selected. The foreground is not selected. Actually, its visibility is hidden. So that's it. It's not hard. We all can do this. So let's just give it some time. My Photoshop here is taking a little bit longer than I expected, and it's somehow freezing. Okay, now this is not good. This is not good. But anyway, let's be patient enough, and we go on together. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can see, it's done. Now, the object has been removed from the background, because now once we put the foreground back, this is what we see. Now, if we disable the foreground, we realize that the background has no foreground, so we can go ahead and click the selection tool. Now, all we have to do is to remove this selection. We have to deselect it, so you just go to select, then deselect. But the shortcut is Ctrl D, okay? Yeah, so that is it. But then if you realize if it's not yet smooth enough, or if it's not fine the way you want it to be, you can still go ahead and draw the lasso tool. Maybe at this point you can draw again, and you say fill again. So you go to edit and fill, content aware, just click OK, because you also want it to be filled and so it can look more uniform. That is if you have the time, but right now we don't have the time, and we feel for us we're okay with it, so we would go ahead and cancel. So one fill is enough. So you don't have to necessarily do two fills or two different fills, because it's in the background. Remember, something is in front of it, it will still come over it. So don't mind so much about that. But since it's a class, I wanted us to learn that we can do it more than once, so I had to redo it again. Alright, so let's see what we have here. So after filling the foreground with the content of the background, or after filling your selection in the background using the content, the surrounding content, now we can go ahead and manipulate the background. So you can see now what we've done. You see, it's actually worse. So we said Ctrl D is the shortcut. So Ctrl D is the shortcut for removing the selection. Now we can go ahead and apply whatever effect we want here. And today we said we are starting with the blurry effect. So let us apply the blurry effect here. So since we have two separate layers, we can apply any effect we want. For example, we can make the background black and white, and yet the foreground is colored. So we can also do that. So for now, let us go to the blur effect. If we want to create the blur effect, we just go to filter, then blur, then you select one of these blurs. But the most common ones, we have the lens blur and the surface blur. Those are common ones that will easily give you what you want. I mean, according to the design that we'll want to use. There are others like Gaussian blur, and what we apply these ones in different other designs. But for now, if we're dealing with the background, I would recommend that you use the lens blur and the surface blur. You can also use the motion blur. if you want it to be blurred, like the background was traveling, you know, that when it's blurred, like you take a photo when you're in a car, how it will appear. Yeah, you can do that, or you can also do radio blur like that. But for now, let us go ahead and do lens blur. So this is what happens. Now you can see it is blurry because under radius it's already at 62%. So that's the amount of blurriness. It's now you to decide how much blurriness do you want to put. I like using 50 because I don't want my photos to be like too blurry like that. There are some, okay, it's good for model photos. Yeah, there you can use 100%. But the rest of the effects, sorry, the rest of the things here, you can apply them, but I don't have time to always do that. So what I'm interested in always here is the radius. I just adjust the radius and I just press OK. You can choose Gaussian or uniform, but I always prefer uniform. You can adjust these values and so on. So I've taken 50%. You can go ahead and take more than that. If you're done, you go ahead and click OK. So you can see now the background is already blurry. So if you enable the foreground, now you see your foreground is standing clearly, but when the background is blurry. Okay, that's it. Very simple, very interesting, because now you can see this is after our effect has been applied. This is before. Now I think you can notice the difference. There's a very big difference. This is after editing. Now this is before. Okay, so this is how simple we can do that. So let's go ahead and apply some other effects to the background. Let's first disable the foreground. Now let's make the background more green or what, those effects. Now let's talk about the color adjustments. These adjustments, we can come to these adjustments, we create a layer for it, and so on and so forth. So we are going to learn that even today, and we shall be applying it also in our next classes. But I want you to understand the order of layers here. Okay, what is in front will be in front, what is up here, I mean, will be in front. So first of all, what we have is what we call the brightness stroke contrast. It's under adjustment, please. If you're not seeing it, you can go to window and make sure adjustments is selected. Then definitely you'll be able to see all this. So adjustment layers, the first one we're having is what we call the brightness stroke contrast. All right, now let's proceed with our class. Under brightness and contrast, here you can add more light, or you can add more clarity, or what we call contrast to your photo. In this particular case, we're talking about the background only. You can also apply it to the foreground, but we are not interested in that right now. We are only interested in the background. So just go ahead and click that. Once you click, you will see a layer. Another layer will be added. Now, the layer has been added between the foreground and the background. Means this layer will appear only on the background. It will not appear in the foreground because it's not on top of the foreground. Remember, we said what is on top is what shows in front. So we can go ahead and adjust rather. Our brightness currently is on 0. So we can adjust it up. You're noticing the changes, so you can adjust that and you see the changes. Now even with contrast, you can see. So we can take contrast up to 100. So now you see now how photo, the way it's becoming more and more beautiful. Okay, so you can just go ahead and add that, but the layer has already been added. So we can add another one, that is brightness and contrast. All these are different effects that you can apply. If you use all of them, if we use all of them, I mean, we shall come up with a mixture which is not so good. So I'm just going to use a few, but in your free time you can go ahead and practice with the rest. Now the next one is what we call the levels. So with the levels, you can also edit, you can adjust the levels, you know. You can choose the levels, the defaults, the presets. You can choose darker, you can see it becomes dark, and so on and so forth. Once you're done, you can do that. If you feel like you're not okay with the layer of levels, you can delete it. Right click, then you go to delete layer. Then you click yes. So that layer will be deleted, will remain with only brightness. So it means that effect of levels has not been applied. Another effect is what we call the curves. So under curves, we're able to play around with the colors but using a curve. Now under presets, it's still on default. But there are many presets, for example, color negative. Now this is what happens when it's negative. Color process, cross process, this is it. So you can go ahead and choose any you want of your choice. That is it. So these are presets. That is if you like using presets. But I don't like using presets personally because I want to edit my own. So I always set it to, you can go to default. Then you adjust the curve from here. Now these ones are not presets. This you adjust while looking at the difference. Now we are adjusting the color curve of RGB, red, green, and blue, a mixture of red, green, and blue. But you can also choose to only adjust green. For example, if you feel this photo is too green, like it has a lot of green, you can click green so that you bring the green in it down. You can see at this point the green is less because there's more red and blue. So that is it. You can choose to pick only one color. You can see it's more greenish and so on and so forth. You can choose one, or you can choose both or all of them. That's red, green, and blue at the same time. And under here you can choose auto, okay, like to auto set it. Now those are some of the effects you can go ahead and add. There are very many. Now this is exposure. You can increase the exposure. Okay, this is what happens when you increase exposure. That is it. You can even reduce it so that there is the photo is less exposed, like that. So let me delete that layer. I don't want it, but you can go ahead and use your very many effects. There is also vibrance. You can go ahead and add vibrance to your photo. Now you can see when the vibrance is much, it's actually better. So this is saturation. The other one is vibrance. And so on and so forth. Please go ahead during your free time and check these effects. Now every effect you add, a layer will be added here. So let us now activate or enable our foreground layer. Now this is what we have. You can see the way the background is beautiful. We have not yet touched on the foreground. We have been adjusting only the background. The background is really so beautiful. So if we wanted, or if we want all the effects we've applied to also be applied on the foreground, we have to bring the layer of foreground under here. So at this point, you see the effects in the background has also been applied on the foreground. You see that those effects that we have added, they were very good for the background, but they were not good for the foreground. So that's why we advise that always treat these two layers separately. So I'm just going to put it back. Now from here, you can easily tell that we are almost done with our background. We have edited the background. We have a very beautiful background. In this particular case, it's blurry. We have added a few effects and so on and so forth. You can always group layers. You select, if you want to select more than one layer at the same time, you click one, then you press Control, then you press on the you click on the second one. So press Control on your keyboard, then you can be able to do that. Then you can even put all this in a folder. You just click and drag and bring it to this folder down here. Then you see it has been grouped into a folder. All those effects, instead of us having many things written up here or many layers, all those layers are now in one folder. I mean, those are some of the few things that you can always play around with and so on and so forth. So instead of using these adjustments here, you could also come to this icon. This icon here is what we call the create new fill or adjustment layer. So we can add another adjustment layer, or these are shortcuts. So these shortcuts here, we could actually get it from here. So we could come here and click here. Now you can see we talked about brightness and contrast. If you remember, we talked about levels, curves. All those ones are here now in words, so you can get it there. Also, you can also get it from somewhere else. You come to layer, then you come to new adjustment layer. So you'll find all those effects that you're seeing on the sides here. They're also there. So it's now up to you to choose where you're going to get your effects from. Choose any effect that you want to apply and you apply it. And remember, each and every time you apply the effect, it will come as a layer. So remember that you have to arrange your layer in a systematic way. Otherwise, the effects may be applied onto a part of the layer that you don't want. For example, it may be applied on the foreground, and yet this effect you wanted only for the background. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is about the blurry effect and also the adjustment layers. So at this particular moment, I'm sure you guys are now able to do all the things that I've been talking about. So I don't expect it to be so hard, like seriously. Now we can separate the background from the foreground. We said this is our background, this is our foreground. We can remove this foreground and take it somewhere else and edit it somewhere else. We can just go ahead and use the lasso tool still. Sorry about that. So let me deselect lasso tool. We select around that. So we just make that simple selection. After selecting like that, you come back to the move tool, then press Ctrl C to copy. Then you can open a new document. Open new, like the way we do it in Illustrator. Then you can paste what you did the other time or what you had the other time. Now this time around it will come with its background because we didn't make, we had other layers but under it. You remember the other time we didn't have it, the other layer. So if we had not applied the other layers, we would just come and do that. So we could come, and if we had made a precise selection, we could come and bring the foreground only here. But since we already went past that step and we don't want to undo it, so let's just proceed with what we were doing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, how about we do something else? I mean, today I have decided to exhaust a lot of things. We are running out of time. This is supposed to be our last week of training, and we have a few more things still remaining, so I want to give you all these things. I don't know if you're already tired, but if you're not tired, please let us take a short break and we return in our next video. And in the next video, we shall be looking at a few more corrections. For example, I think we should do teeth and eye whitening. You know, there are moments when the photo you've taken, the person, the eyes are red, yellow, you know, those things. We can correct those effects, and yeah, we shall proceed from there. But thanks so much. My name is Luke Davis from Adobe Media, and we are still continuing. So let's meet in our next video.